Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to continue on with this week's theme of musical characters, bands who are performing as someone other than themselves. Today we're looking at the group Gorillaz. They are an animated band, I think would be the way to describe them. They're created by musician Damon Albarn and artist Jamie Hewlett, and as far as I know, the animated characters are who we are supposed to assume is performing the music. I don't really know a lot about Gorillaz. I've seen music videos for like Feel Good Inc. That might have been it. That was a really big hit in like the 2000s. And if you watched MTV, or I think more specifically in my case, Fuse back then, it was really difficult not to see this music video every week. But we're not looking at Feel Good Inc. today. We're looking at the track White Flag from their 2010 Plastic Beach album. This song features Bashi, Kano, and the National Orchestra for Arabic Music. Let's dive in and see what Gorillaz is bringing to the table today. Nothing that I would ever expect from them, but I'm really enjoying this opening.
Look, yo, no castaway, no survivor. I ain't lost and
Very drastic change of pace there.
In this big wide world, and mommy ain't said, honey, I shrunk the kids yet. I ain't Jesus, but I'm walking on water. There's no bombs here, there's no war, cuz I can break out of jail with a lighter. So is there any point in making laws, blood? This ain't Atlantis, are you sure? I nearly suffocated when I touched the shore. No rain, condoms, it poured, and up the road, you'll never guess who I saw.
It's K.A. Look, skip on the beat like Ollie in the gym. Honey, I'm home, this is where I wanna live. Just found it like Nemo on a D-Lo. I don't know if it's greener, but it's green though. On the other side of the fence, bite to the ends. Look, no vets, no stress, no rent, no superficial shit. This real flow.
Really cool vocal layering there.
But the beach cold, and the speech goes like, hi little lady, 6 on the beach, wanna try for a baby. Word in the village, I'm a little bit crazy. Swagger on 100 degrees, no A. Look, if heaven had a VIP, this is it, white sand, blue sea. But I don't know who they are, and I'm damn sure they don't know me. But I come in peace.
Cool, white flag, white flag.
No war,
no guns,
no poor.
just life,
Just love,
no hype,
just fun,
no ties,
just me and my mind.
just me and my wife.
But tell me if I'm dreaming, cause I don't wanna wake up till the evening.
And I don't wanna be left sleeping from all the diseases that I breathe in.
Look, respect the island, no stealing.
And don't bring religion here, no free kings.
Integrated and we ain't leaving, we come on a peace thing.
White flag,
White flag.
Really interesting juxtaposition between the orchestral work and the hip-hop side of things. This is gonna bookend it, isn't it? All right. So yeah, there's two very distinct modes to this track. We have the orchestral led intro and outro, which is actually the exact same part from what I could tell, and the middle rapping section, which seemed to have had a verse, chorus structure going on to it. That is to say, there is a moment that I recognized similar to both of them, which is the white flag section. It is a very short moment. I don't know if we necessarily want to call it a chorus, given how short it is, but it is a repeated section that we return to after each of the verses. Now, what's interesting is that these two sides of the music, the hip hop and the orchestral, aren't actually that different. Sure, there's different tools being utilized in the composition for each of them, but they're both crafted through a very similar means, which is layers. If we listen to the orchestral part, especially the intro of the song, we get to see most of the layers being added on top of each other pretty piecemeal. We started off with uh, one melodic instrument, I don't remember what it was, and the hand drums. We stack on another melodic instrument. The hand drums become more intense, and I think around bar 9 is when we bring in the flute and the wider orchestration. And by bar 17, I'm pretty sure, after we've had a full phrase of our intro, we have the full width, and we get to see this slow layering up of it. By the time we get into the full orchestral part, it is incredibly dense. There's so much going on that it's really easy to get lost in it all. If we listen to the hip hop section and remove the vocals, which isn't entirely fair, but stick with me for a moment, remove the vocals from it and listen to what's going on underneath it, there's actually a lot of layers here, especially compared to my limited exposure to hip hop. There are certainly artists out there who utilize more densely layered beats, but for the most part, I find that the majority of the hip hop that I have listened to tends to have more simplistic beats underneath the rapping. And this doesn't. There's a lot of complexity to it, and there's linear movement. There is a lot of change between sections in the musicality of it, whether that is purely timbre wise. I noticed that after our first 16 bars of our first verse, we completely shifted to a totally different set of instruments to continue on with the verse. There's a lot of rhythmic ideas going on in here. There's some melodic ideas. There's counterpoint. I don't really remember any like foundational chordal stuff going on, but there is a lot of instrumentation and movement going on beneath the vocals, which I really appreciated. You know, even for the few moments when I decided not to listen to what the vocals were doing, I listened to what's going on in the instruments, and there's a lot of variety. There's a lot of stuff to dig into there, and I think that normally when it comes to hip hop music, I tend to find myself not necessarily bored, but leaning towards the boredom, usually due to the repetition of both the, not, sorry, due to the repetition in the musicality of it. There's usually change ups of flow, of pacing, of rhythmic ideas in the vocal delivery, but usually on the musical side, it's one idea for the entirety of the verse. And it's just really nice hearing so many different elements and layers and sections to the hip hop aspect of this track. Now, the vocals also have a bit of variety, though. There is the rhythmic change ups, like I was just talking about, but we also have two rappers here. I don't know who they are. None of the vocals I heard sounded like they came from Gorillaz, so I'm going to guess that this was Bashi and Kano, but I don't know either of those artists, so I could be wrong. Regardless, the end result is two vocalists with their own distinct style, timbre, and sound. And what's really cool is that this could have been a typical feature where each of the featured artists gets a verse and that's it. But instead, they were written collaboratively. They don't just switch off 16 bars or 32 bars each like it's some sort of jazz solo. There's a lot of interplay between them. Sometimes we'll get a few bars of one and then a few bars of the other. Sometimes they'll jump in and emphasize specific words together. There was at one point in the first verse when he said know this and know that and know this other thing, and the no was emphasized from both vocalists, but what he was saying that we're not going to have any of was just the one vocalist. I thought that was a really clever way to do that. And this was only the beginning of it. As we go through the rest of the 2.5 minutes roughly of the hip hop section, we see a lot of interplay between our two vocalists, and it creates a lot of timbre layering. There's a little bit of dyads going on there. I don't know if they particularly aimed for specific notes when they were rapping together or singing together, but there were some moments when I found there was some consonance in that, and I don't know if it was intentional or if it was just natural. You know, hey, I gotta hit this note with him. I know what he's gonna say, and just instinctively aims for something a bit in a tonal resonance. Um, but yeah, it does create a sort of harmonic element to it. And this is all going on top of music that is a bit simpler compared to our A section, our orchestral stuff, but still a bit more complex than I would associate with the genre as a whole. And it creates something that is interesting and dense. I find this song to be something that I'm interested in listening to again and may even spin real quick after I'm done listening or after I'm done making this video, because it is a bit on the shorter side and because I know there's a lot of stuff I missed, which is not something I typically say about hip hop. You know, that's usually avant-garde music, experimental, progressive. These are the areas where I'm like, I need a few listens to fully grasp. Hip hop is just not one of those. Outside of lyrical density, which I'm never going to get on the first time. Wordsmiths are just, they're beyond my comprehension. But yeah, this is a hip hop track. I'm like, I want to listen to it again. There's some really cool things going on, and I know I missed some stuff, and I think that's really cool. Now, all of this brings me back to our outro slash intro, the bit from the National Orchestra for Arabic Music. I don't know how I feel about it. I think harmonically it fits in generally. I found the shift from our intro to our first verse a bit disorienting. It felt like an odd change, but coming out of our final chorus back into our outro, revisiting this introductory idea again, I thought that that was a rather smooth movement. And if all of the B section, if our hip hop section is all the same, and our intro and outro are the same, if moving into one is smooth, then the transition from one to the other must be smooth as well. Moving from B to A is fine, then A to B should also be fine. So I think it was mostly not really knowing what was going on, a little bit of surprise of the shift at the beginning, whereas at the end I was sort of expecting to return back to that sound. I'm not entirely sure. It's going to be something that I concentrate on for a second listen, but I'm still not sure how I feel about the inclusion of it. Harmonically, I'm still a little confused on whether it fits or not. Melodically, I find it to be really interesting in that it creates these really nice moving parts that don't really get reflected in the hip hop sections. And I think that might be where some of the friction is, in that we have these really fleshed out melodic lines that don't really get replicated in any way in the hip hop sections. The beats, the rhythmic elements, some of the chordal illusions are all tied together between our A and our B, but the melodies are sort of lost in order to make room for the vocal section, which is primarily texture and rhythmic based. And so it kind of makes the B sections feel a bit flat. And maybe that's why it works going the other way for me, is that I got adjusted to our hip hop section, and moving into the orchestral section was like an expansion of ideas rather than a reduction. And an expansion will typically feel better to my ears, depending on context, of course, where the reduction feels like, oh, I was enjoying that and now I'm missing something, rather than enjoying what's going on and realizing that there could be more to it. But I am kind of intrigued, I think is the word, about how this intro and outro relate to the hip hop section, why they were in here, how this feature came about, and I think more importantly, who composed the National Orchestra. I'm not saying that whoever composes the music for Gorillaz couldn't do it. I don't have enough experience with the group or artist. I don't know if it's a one person idea or not. I'm not saying that they don't have the skills to write the orchestral bit, but it definitely feels, it is a sound that I've never heard associated with the Gorillaz before, and so I just wouldn't assume that their composer could do it. They've never showcased that they can before. So let me put it that way. I've never heard this type of writing come from this person before. And so it makes me wonder, are they doing this? Did they write it? In which case, it comes to my usual question. I really enjoy this. Why don't you do more of it? Of course, Gorillaz is a band that works really well at what they do, and they have an audience for it. Sometimes having restraint is the way to go. I usually praise bands for knowing, what a song needs and executing on just that alone, not always going for the flourishy stuff. But I really love this opening bit, and I want to know where to get more of it. So, yeah. Yeah, I guess overall, my feelings on this track, I don't really have a strong thematic or emotional resonance with this song. It has Phrygian mode throughout the intro and outro, and so I have the typical feelings with that. It's a very Middle Eastern sound, but the hip hop section, I never really quite got a read on. It's fun, but I don't know if fun is necessarily what they're going for, but it also feels very different from from our intro and outro. And I think that's my takeaway here on a first time reaction, without really having time to ingest it and sit with it for a while and get some repeat listens under my belt. It feels very divorced. It feels like they had a really cool orchestral part and a really cool hip hop part with the featured vocalists, the dual rapping and stuff, taking turns, augmenting each other's flows, and then they're just like, let's put them together and vaguely line them up harmonically. And like I said, they don't not fit, but they also kind of don't fit. And I'm not sure how to feel about it yet. I'm going to hit some lyrics right here, see what's going on with that. So, this is an interesting little bit of information here. I believe they interviewed one of the members of the band, who, of course, is completely virtual, they're fictional. And the story that this member told them was that he grabbed Bashi and Kano and dumped them on Plastic Beach, a literal or fictional, I suppose, beach though. And he handed them a mic and told them to freestyle about where they are. Now, I don't think that the piece itself is freestyle, though it quite possibly could be, but that's the story behind the piece. And it seems to be an introduction to Plastic Beach, this place that the album is about. I don't know if it's a conceptual album, but it does say that it's an introduction to this place and to the album simultaneously. Um, so yeah, that's something. Um, I also had my structure wrong. It isn't a verse, chorus, verse, chorus. There's three verses. One for Bashi, one for Kano, and then one for them together. What it's about is, as I've mentioned, they were placed here and told to talk about it. Narratively, anyways. And so they talk about how small it is, how far away from the world it is, how peaceful it is, how stress free it is. It isn't a great place for sure. At one point, he says, I don't want to be left sleeping from all the diseases that I breathe in. The concept behind Plastic Beach is that it's literally a lump of garbage in the middle of the ocean that has been spray painted to look nice. And so they're literally just stranded on trash. It's not a great place to be. And as he says, I can breathe in a bunch of diseases here, but there's no war. There's no guns. There's no bombs. He says there's just life and love without the hype. There's fun. Just me and my mind. He says, we're integrated and we ain't leaving. White flag. You know, peace. I surrender. Just leave me here. It's an interesting way to go about it. I think it works as an introduction to both the album, assuming that they continue on with vibes like this. Again, this does not sound like what I associate the Gorillaz with, but you know, bands can change. It could be a sound just for the album, or it could just be that I've heard a sound that Gorillaz has sent out that isn't indicative of their sound as well. But it also introduces the concept of this place narratively across a possible concept album, telling about what this place is and its ups and downs. You kind of get a good picture of the pros and cons about being here. Going through the lyrics didn't really answer any questions I had about the orchestral usage or its inclusion, the music, but I suppose maybe it's not supposed to. Just kind of wound up here, much like Kano and Bashi did, and just kind of enjoying it. I don't know why there's an orchestra beginning and ending this track, but I enjoy it, so I surrender. Let me listen to it. I'm fine here. That kind of vibe. I did try to see who wrote this, and it says that it's written by Damon Albarn, Bashi, and Kano. So, the personnel, the credits, is very exhaustive. I know where it was recorded at, who was the engineers, what companies published it, who programmed some of the music, who was the mixing engineer, and who was the recording engineer, who was the mastering engineer. It is a very in-depth, and there is only one place for composer or written by. I assume Bashi and Kano wrote their verses, so Damon wrote the music, which I think is pretty cool. I'd love to hear more traditionally melodic songs from Gorillaz or just Damon in general. I don't know if he does stuff outside of Gorillaz. If anybody has directions towards anything like that, please point me that way. Those are my thoughts on Gorillaz White Flag. Let me know yours. Give me your perspectives, opinions, whatever, down in the comment section. Let me know if you enjoyed this, anything that stood out to you. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. It'll take you to this menu right here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. All right, we do have a special selection today. The band is someone we've checked out before, but I don't quite remember. I should. The band's name is Spock's Beard. I know I've heard that before. I just can't place a sound or a band to it. I think it's older prog, but I don't know. If that doesn't interest you though, I'll be back tomorrow as usual, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC. We're going to continue on with with this week's theme. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.